In this video training session of 3D Studio Max, we'll look into resetting Autodesk 3D Studio Max technique. We'll understand the viewport navigation, and also we'll look into the selection techniques which you use during the creating. We'll create also the standard primitives. We'll render a still image and how to change the background during rendering, that also we'll look. And primarily this course has been designed by looking the interior and exterior technicality of architects, and when you create and when you understand the customer requirement and accordingly you cater to those inputs and you deliver the outputs, you have to look all the small parameters during your creation. So we'll start with the resetting technique. And initially, we'll look into the navigation controls which we'll use during your selections and working. And different navigation controls you can see in 3D Studio Max: zoom, zoom all, zoom extend, and likewise you have a couple of zoom options, the field of view, and with respect to a particular perspective angle you can look, and pan view, you can freely move your views in your viewport. You can have a walkthrough, orbit, and orbit can be with selection, and you can have sub objects as well, and you can maximize the viewport and you can do the controlling. Let us start with the selection techniques. And if you see the selection technique, you have the keyboard shortcuts, and you can see from the menu you can select, or from the main toolbar you can select, or from the keyboard also you can have the shortcuts. And if you go for the different selection techniques, you can see Q, H and W primarily we use, E also will use. So we'll look when to use which particular option. So if you see the Q, you can select your object. If you see the H, you can select by name. If you see W, you can move your object. And if you see E, you can rotate your object. And if you see R, you can scale your object. Let us start with some basic understanding of this command which we saw. If you see this particular side, right side, you can see different object type under standard primitives, and I am creating a teapot in order to apply the principle of move, rotate, scale, etc. And you can see all the object inside the viewport which we have discussed in our earlier introduction class. So here we'll see, if you go for the H, you will get the scene selection dialog box. Here you can have a couple of objects and you can select the one which you need to select. For example, if I am having another teapot here, and you go for H, you can see three pot. I am selecting this one, and accordingly you can see this is selected, and whatever the operation you would like to do, that can be done. Let us maximize this viewport, and you can maximize here. And if you maximize the viewport, you can have the quick options here: move, rotate, or you can have your scale. If you go to the move, you can directly select this gizmo. This icon is known as gizmo, where you can have the X, Y and Z, and you can control the rotations, translation and combined effect which you would like to apply. Like this you can move in a particular direction. If you see here, if you go for the W, you can have the move directly. If you press the keyboard shortcut W and you select the object, this will come. If you go for E, you have the rotation so that you can rotate the object. And if you go for R, you can have the scale directly. So you can have W, you can have E for rotation, you can have R for scaling. We'll look in brief onto those commands in our coming session. This is from the scene which I've shown you. And different sides of your scale, you can see the scale. You can do a uniform scale, you can have the non-uniform scale with a particular direction, or you can have a planar scale as well. So we'll apply this to better understand this principle. If you select the object and you go for uniform scale, you can put the cursor at the center and you can have the uniform scale, maybe with the enlarged factor or maybe with the reduced factor. But if you select a particular side, particular direction, then you can see you can do the scale. Just like that, if you want a two direction any plane, here you can select and you can do along that particular plane. So three different types of scaling you can do. A global uniform scale by keeping your cursor at the center or any particular direction, or you can have your plane maybe YZ, maybe XY, or maybe XZ. Just like that, you can have your rotations, and these rotations you can do directly by using the shortcut or by using any particular menu options which you prefer. For example, if you select the object and you go for this particular option per rotate, and you can have the direct rotation here, and you can see here the displayed angle as well when you rotate. With a particular angular rotation you can also do it, or you can have with snap as well. That will look in our coming session for better understanding the advanced principle. Now we look into the standard primitives. The standard primitives are very useful when you start or when you want to give a kickstart to your design. That may be interiors or that may be exterior when you talk about any architectural aspect. So standard primitives are started with your box. You can create the box with the set parameters. You can have your colors and you can change any point of time, and when you have the parameters you can control all the parameters independently. These are the parameters which you can see for sphere, for rectangle, geospheres, and you can have the control for the mesh to create a better quality output. You can have cylinder, you can have cone, and you can create frustum as well. You can create a tube. You can create a torus by setting its parameter. You can create a pyramid. You can create a planar surface. You can create a teapot. And you can see how it looks during the render. So before discussing the modeling technique, we'll start with the basic principle of how you can create the box and its parameter and peripheral controls. Let us start with the box. You can select the object and you can press the del key, and this grid which you are seeing you can switch on and off by pressing Z, as I discussed in my earlier class. So we'll start with box. You can click the box command from the command panel. Then you select a point in your screen by left mouse click and you drag to give the base. Then you release the left and just you push above and click again. Now you can see all the parameters like length, width and height will be shown here. So if I'm looking for a length of 125, a width of 75 and a height of 50, this you can finalize. If you go to the selection here, and you can directly apply any type of modifications which you are looking for. If you select F3, you can see the wireframe and you select the object, and for editing the parameters you can directly go to the modify. Once you select modify, you can see all the parameters. Here you have the mesh. You can select the length segment to higher order, so that in future you can edit those points also to give a different shape that I will discuss in my coming lectures. And just like that, width also you can increase the number of segments and also height. And if you go to F4, with the wireframes and with the shaded, you can see it. I am selecting F3 for toggling the wireframe and the solid model. You can go for F4 to toggle the frames, and you can remove this selection box by pressing the J key. You can press J to remove this selection box. So anytime you can press J to remove your selection box. So just like that, whatever the parameters you talk about here, that may be later I require 150, this you can do change. Just like that, other primitives you can see. You go to the create panel and you can see cone here. If you click cone, you have all the parameters listed here. So directly interactively you can create this. Select the first point, drag it to create the base, release the selection which you have done through left mouse, and give the vertical direction just by pushing the mouse. Again click here and give the top diameter by just moving the mouse. And here you can come and directly set the bottom radius. I am looking for 75. You can press tab to switch to the next input. I am giving here 20, and I am giving the height as 125. And here, just like the previous one box, you have the segment selections. If you go to the selection here and you go to F3, you can see the wireframe, and this wireframe, if you increase, the smoothness of the object also will get increased. So you can directly go to modify and you can change the height segment. I am looking for more numbers, and the cap segment, the top one, you can have more, and side segment also I can have more. In this way you can directly control the smoothness and accuracy of your object by putting or by assigning more frames. In your coming sessions, we'll look in brief about the other primitives and how to use it and the techniques. Thank you.